Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
I was standing outside a bar in Brooklyn, sweating through a pressed shirt I didn't even like, when I first heard the cello. Not in a hall, not at some gala. Just this low, raw sound echoing off the old pier. It stopped me cold, deep, honest, not showy, not trying to earn anything. I stepped off the sidewalk without thinking. She was sitting on a folding chair, hair pulled back, hands streaked with dried paint. Her bow moved like she wasn't even trying, like breathing. A cardboard sign by her case said, "Tips go to Harbor House." I scanned the area, waiting for the hustle, the camera guy in the shadows, some sob story printed on a flyer. Nothing. Just her, playing. A guy stood nearby, arms crossed, built like a linebacker past his prime. He wasn't watching her. He was watching us. Like he was there in case somebody didn't get the message to stay respectful. I dropped $50 into her case. Not to impress her. Not even thinking. She looked up, gave me the smallest nod. No smile, no flirt. Just, thanks. And kept playing. My phone buzzed. Melanie. 8 minutes out. I stayed another 10. The music didn't change much. Same aching, steady rhythm. Then another text. "Sorry, traffic. 9 more minutes." I checked the time. 23 minutes standing outside a bar that reeked of IPA and influencer energy. Wearing a smile I'd been trained to keep on. I walked. Past the patio full of guys named Brad in white polos. Past the pier. Past her. And I swear, I already felt it even then. Like I'd just missed something I couldn't get back. Before we start, tell us which city or country you're listening from. Let's see which corners of the world we've gathered from today. Thanks. And now the story. My name's Matthew Rogers. I was 22 then. Born and raised in Boston, Back Bay specifically, where summer has a dress code and money talks in polite tones. My dad worked the foreign service circuit like it was chess. My mom planned fundraisers that made headlines. I had a Navy blazer by age 7, a LinkedIn profile at 15. By the time I hit college, I didn't choose a major. I inherited one. Finance, obviously. I was the guy everyone liked at brunches. Polite, clean-cut, bland as drywall. That's where Melanie came in. Blonde, polished, quick with names and knowing laughs. We'd been trotted out like matching centerpieces since high school. She went into PR. Of course she did. We weren't in love. We were in sync. Like an Outlook calendar with no errors. Our parents approved. That was enough. The thing is, I told myself that's what real life looked like. Affection that came with a dress code and long-term plans. Love? That was for poets and screw-ups. That summer, I'd landed a junior analyst gig in Manhattan. Finance firm in Midtown, skyscraper lobby, cold brew in the lobby. It all felt big and fake at the same time, like wearing a rented tux you couldn't afford to sweat in. Melanie was in town for a conference. Said to meet her in Brooklyn, where the lighting was better for the rooftop crowd. Instead, I found the cello, and the girl with paint under her fingernails. And for the first time in years, I felt something crack through all that polish. Melanie showed up in heels and high-gloss lipstick, already laughing into a phone call. She kissed my cheek, didn't notice I was quiet. We ordered overpriced cocktails and made small talk about brands and third-quarter targets. But something in me had shifted. 2 days later, I found Harbor House. Long bus ride, wrong side of the tracks, neighborhood full of cracked sidewalks and busted gutters. The front door looked like it had been repainted a dozen times with whatever was left over in the basement. The lobby smelled like soup and bleach. No art, no welcome desk, just a wall calendar, 2 folding chairs, and a volunteer with tired eyes. Audrey was on the floor with 3 kids, chalk in her hands, drawing a lighthouse across a chunk of black foam board. One of the boys was scribbling a dinosaur tail on the base and explaining that it helped the lighthouse walk. She didn't correct him. She looked up, like she already knew I'd show. "You follow the music?" she asked, brushing her hands on her jeans. "I can juggle," I said, like a complete idiot. I hadn't touched juggling balls since junior year of high school, but my brain was sprinting ahead of my dignity. There were 3 foam stress balls in a bin by the wall. I grabbed them and somehow didn't drop them. A couple kids clapped. Audrey grinned. It wasn't a glamorous moment, but I felt like a real magician. "Want to pack lunches?" she asked, standing up. "Sure," I said, "unless there's a tougher audition." We made ham sandwiches and taped a man's busted knuckles after he tried to lift a hot pot without a towel. Audrey moved like someone who'd done this too many times to panic. I just followed her lead. At one point, a beagle tore through the hallway with a stuffed bear in its mouth, and we ended up cornering it behind a mop bucket. She handed it a slice of turkey like it was normal. Later, on the walk back, the sun was low, and she kept a steady pace, arms tucked, eyes on the sidewalk. The silence was easy, until it wasn't. "I want to see you again," I blurted out, way too fast. I sounded like a 12-year-old with a crush. She didn't slow down, just glanced at me sideways. "Why?" I opened my mouth and nothing smart came out. "I don't know. I just do." We hit the corner near her block, a stretch of broken fence and a rusted fire hydrant. 2 shadows peeled off the wall like they'd been waiting. Both were tall, calm, the kind of calm that comes with certainty. One had a shaved head and a silver tooth. The other, taller, was the guy I'd seen near the pier. Same broad frame, steady eyes. The tall one stepped in front of me. "You here to play games?" he asked. "Don't come back." I froze. My pulse jumped. Audrey didn't say a word, didn't even look surprised. I wasn't sure if this was a test or a warning, but I heard myself say, "I'm not." "Do you love her?" the guy asked, not blinking. The word came out like a cough I'd been holding for years. "Yes." He leaned in a little. "Would you marry her?" My throat closed. I nodded. "Yes." He looked at me like he was checking for cracks in concrete. Then he patted my shoulder once. Not soft, not cruel, just real. I didn't flinch, but I felt the weight of it. Later I'd learn his name was Hank. Grew up in Harbor House. Same age as Audrey. He didn't talk much, but people listened when he did. Back at my place, my phone lit up. 12 missed calls from Melanie. One text said, "Are you okay?" The next said, "You're being rude." The last one said, "Call me now." I waited until morning. We met at a coffee shop uptown, neutral ground. She wore beige like it was armor. Her face looked concerned, but her tone was all spin. "You've been off-grid," she said. "Are you okay? Your dad asked if you were traveling." "I'm fine," I said. She smiled, professional. "You look tired. I'm planning a launch dinner Thursday. You should come. Everyone's asking for you." Everything she said sounded like copy, like she was pitching me a version of my life I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. I didn't answer, just nodded until it ended. 2 days later, I caught Audrey outside a little cafe in Park Slope, wiping down tables. She wore a plain black apron and a clip in her hair that didn't match. Her sleeves were rolled up, arms splattered with something brown that looked like coffee syrup. "I was in the neighborhood," I lied. She didn't even blink. "You want coffee?" "Only if it's with you." She looked me up and down like she was measuring something deeper than height. "I drink mine black. Cheap drip. That okay?" "Perfect." We sat on a curb outside. She sipped. I didn't. My mouth was dry. She said, "I don't have time for men who break easy." I nodded. "Good. I don't want to break again." She looked away, then back. That smile, small, crooked, like she hadn't decided if I deserved it yet, landed harder than any kiss I'd ever had. I told Melanie we should slow things down. Just that, slow down. Her smile didn't twitch, but her eyes locked up like glass behind museum rope. She didn't even ask why. She just said, "So, you met someone," like it was already a headline. We split in under 9 minutes. She stood. I paid. She walked off without turning. My father called before the check cleared. "You'll bring her to dinner," he said. Not a question. His voice always came like that. Final. Like I'd already agreed. An hour later, my mother texted, "Dinner tomorrow. Bring her. We'll be ready at 7. She still added hearts and exclamation points like that made things gentler. I warned Audrey, but she just laughed. "I've met a few donors before," she said. Then she braided her hair, put on a thrifted blue dress that looked like it had been pressed with love and no money, and said she was ready. The car picked us up at 6:30. The driver wore a gray suit, thin gloves, and a blank expression. I didn't know then how much that would matter. Back Bay looked like it always did. Tight streets, stone stairs, old money trying to pretend it wasn't watching. Our brownstone had ivy that was trimmed by appointment. Inside, the air felt colder than usual. Not temperature, just the way it sat on your skin. Dad played diplomat from the start. He smiled in a way that never reached his eyes. "Audrey, we've heard so much," he said. "You're with that community place, correct?" "Harbor House," she said, calm as ever. "It's where I grew up. I volunteer there and do weekend shifts at a cafe nearby." Mom did the velvet pillow routine, soft voice, compliments with barbs hidden under the sugar. "You've got such kind energy," she said. "Very refreshing. Not everyone is comfortable in these rooms." Audrey didn't flinch. Comfort's overrated. Dinner was grilled salmon, baby asparagus, and charm. Dad told a story about me building a birdhouse in 3rd grade. Mom brought out a photo I didn't know she still had. I laughed too hard. Audrey sipped her water and asked real questions about their work in Europe. They laughed at her jokes, asked where she got her dress, acted like they were already filling out a guest list. I felt my chest tighten halfway through dessert, like I was sitting inside someone else's life, like they were already sealing the edges of this moment to make it safe. On the front steps, I said it before I could second-guess it. "Marry me after this." Audrey touched my sleeve, looked me square in the eye. "Survive your parents' living room first," she said. "Then ask me again." I kissed her cheek. She didn't pull back. At the door, Mom said, "Let the driver take you. It's late." The car didn't smell like anything. Not leather, not cologne, not even air freshener. It's weird what you remember. Audrey rested her head on my shoulder as we crossed the bridge. I watched the river below and thought, I did it. I made an adult decision, not the one they picked. My own. Then the driver looked up, met my eyes in the mirror. Pale blue, almost colorless. A small crescent scar above his right brow. He didn't smile. We pulled into an underground garage, not our apartment building. Side entrance. No one said a word. A nurse in scrubs waited at the door, holding a wheelchair and a small cup. She smiled like this was all routine. "Let's get you checked in," she said. I remember the taste of the pill, mint and metal. I tried to speak, but the words stayed in my throat. By the time the elevator chimed, my knees buckled. Audrey was behind me. I tried to reach back, but everything blurred. The last thing I heard was a beeping sound and someone calling my name. Then a fade, like the lights dimmed. I woke in a private clinic room. White walls, high ceiling, no clock. My mother's hand was in my hair. She was dressed like she'd just come from church. "There was a wreck," she whispered. Her eyes were damp, but her voice was steady. "You were the only one." I blinked, swallowed. My throat felt dry and thick. I asked, "Where's Audrey?" "There've been arrangements," she said. "She had no family. We've handled it." She reached into her purse and pulled out a velvet box. Melanie's old ring, the one from the engagement they'd pushed 2 years ago. She set it on the table like a reminder. "She wouldn't have lasted in your world," Mom added. This is what's best." I couldn't move, couldn't yell. I felt like I'd been hollowed out and filled with fog. The next few days passed like a dream I couldn't wake up from. They kept me medicated. "Just for rest," they said. "Observation, stability." I signed discharge papers with a pen that didn't feel like mine. One of them was something called a family liaison authorization. I didn't read it. A chaplain came to pray for Audrey. I nodded like a mannequin. I couldn't even form the word no. When they let me leave, my father drove. No driver this time. Just him and me in the front of a black sedan on the coast. "We've arranged a place for you to recover," he said. "Quiet, simple. You'll rest." My phone had a new number, a new plan, new contacts, all blank except Mom, Dad, and Melanie. 3 days in, Melanie showed up with folded laundry and a soft voice. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't ask anything. She just put the clothes in drawers and said, "Take your time. I'll be here." I stared out the kitchen window at gulls picking at trash on the dunes behind the house, and thought about nothing. That's how it went most mornings. Thoughts didn't come in full anymore, just fragments. A cello note. Audrey's hand brushing mine. A cup that tasted like metal. I stopped fighting the meds. The dreams were the only place I saw her. Whole. Alive. Still playing. Still moving. Still smiling at kids with crayon-covered fingers. She didn't speak in the dreams, but she looked at me, like she knew, like she was waiting. The day I shaved and didn't recognize the guy in the mirror, my dad said I was ready. Not to go back to state. Too much press, too much exposure, but to something quieter. Family office. Their words, not mine. I sat in on a breakfast with an old friend of my father's who ran an investment fund based in Midtown. Deep carpet, glass walls, someone always offering sparkling water like they were doing you a favor. "You've got presents," the man said, looking at my resume like it was a resume-shaped favor my father had handed him. "We've got a space opening." That was how I landed in a black chair in a high-rise overlooking the city, holding numbers I didn't care about and pretending I did. The days were made of calls, client reviews, risk assessments, internal briefings. I learned how to nod while muted. I learned how to say, "That's a good point," without meaning it. The deals looked clean, clever, perfectly folded, and hollow, like paper cranes. I wore suits again, polished my shoes, nodded through steak dinners with old money. I remembered to smile when I escorted visiting donors. I got good at reading people, who smiled just for press, who actually wrote the checks. Melanie was everywhere again. Now she called from rooftop events and gallery openings. She posted invitations with my name on the RSVP. She never pressured, never cried. She just kept showing up like a steady forecast. "You're not weak," she said one night in a cab, after I missed a toast at a gala and came back smelling like gin. "You're still here." I didn't believe her, but I wanted to. So I held it like it was real. I tried to live normal. 6:10 gym, 7 o'clock Bloomberg, pitch decks till 11. I smiled at the mirror like it was my job. The muscles in my face ached by noon. One night, the TV was on, and I wasn't paying attention until the segment rolled. Local news, human interest piece, Brooklyn waterfront, summer arts program. They showed murals, kids painting sidewalks, then a sketch, charcoal. A woman, bowed over, laughing mid-movement, like the artist caught her mid-breath. Her eyes were bright. I didn't need her name. I drank that night. Too much, too fast. Sat on the floor and whispered apologies into the dark. I told Audrey I was sorry, for not pulling her out, for not checking the mirror sooner, for being exactly what they built. She didn't answer. She just looked at me like she always did in those dreams. Professional, calm, like she was weighing whether I had time left to come back. The next morning I bumped my dose. My hands were too shaky for coffee. I didn't hear the first 2 pings from my boss. Missed a compliance checkpoint. He called me in that afternoon. "Take a week," he said. "You're about to bend the whole quarter if you don't." I nodded, signed the form, walked out. Melanie noticed the tremor when I tried to butter toast the next morning. She didn't say anything right away, just took the knife, set it down, and said, "Get in the car." She didn't call my parents. She didn't ask me to explain. Just drove. North, 2 hours, then 3. A weathered sign that said, wellness, recovery, dignity. She parked. You're destroying yourself, she said, and I'm not going to watch you do it twice. I checked in, got a clipboard and a bracelet, spent 5 days hating everyone, and the next 10 hating myself less. I did the worksheets, wrote the lists, talked to a counselor who didn't write anything down. I said all the right words. Day 89 of sobriety, we got married. No guests, just 2 chairs in a clerk's office. Melanie wore a pale blue suit. I wore whatever didn't wrinkle in a suitcase. Outside in the hallway, my parents waited with smiles that were way too easy. You're on the right track, Dad said, clapping my back like I'd signed some treaty. Mom handed Melanie an envelope. Just a little something for your next step, she said. We moved to D.C. 2 weeks later. New apartment, new job, senior role at the family foundation. I gave it a title that didn't mean anything. Donor strategy and impact alignment. Mostly I wrote emails that used words like engagement funnel and sustainability metric. Melanie decorated the place like a catalog spread. Neutrals, soft lighting, candles that cost more than groceries. I sat in briefings about outreach programs that never reached anyone. Shook hands with ambassadors who never read the reports. We had dinner with couples who smiled tight and drank quick. Everyone looked good on paper. One night, Melanie curled up beside me and said, "You're doing better." I nodded. But inside, I was still speaking to a girl with paint on her hands, who never once asked me to prove anything. The morning started like the rest. Black coffee, double-breasted suit, security clearance at the door. I was outside a donor meeting near DuPont when I saw it. A black sedan across the street, idling with the windows up. I didn't think. I felt. Like my body remembered what my mind had buried. That car, that paint, that slight scrape above the wheel well. The driver stepped out to stretch his legs. I saw his face, and my heart punched me dead in the chest. Pale eyes, crescent scar over the brow. Same man, the one from that night. He turned his head like he was checking traffic, but I saw it. He froze for a beat when our eyes locked. Then he looked past me, toward the marble building behind me. Someone inside was more important than me now. He didn't run, just turned, slow and clean, like he was taking a smoke break. He walked toward the garage under the hotel. I followed him without thinking. My heels clicked across the pavement too loud. I picked up speed, passed a valet stand, turned the corner into the garage, and he was gone. Slid away between concrete and shadows like a ghost trained in exits. I stood there breathing hard, chest tight. My hands were shaking. I called my mother. "Sweetheart," she said, warm like tea on the phone. "Is something wrong?" "I saw him," I said. "The driver from the night Audrey died. He's still working. He saw me and bolted." "Oh, Matthew," she sighed, "you must be mistaken. After everything, it's natural to—" "Don't. Just tell me the truth." There was a pause, just long enough to confirm it. "We couldn't do otherwise," she said finally. "Wasn't it your mistake to push so hard? You rushed it." That sentence cracked something I'd been keeping glued together with duct tape and pills. It fell apart inside me so fast I couldn't speak. I hung up, walked out of the garage like I'd been punched in the spine. I called Rob, an old college buddy who now worked private security for a consulting firm. He owed me a favor. "Run a plate for me," I said, giving him what I remembered. Black sedan, DC tag, fleet type, probably leased under a diplomatic sub. He called back an hour later. I was sitting in a stairwell with my tie off and my coat half on. "No crash report in any region for that night," he said. I didn't say anything. No tow, no impound, no driver record matching the description. "Matt, there's nothing. No crash at all." I dropped the phone. Just let it hit the concrete and slide. The walls spun, my stomach flipped, and the rest of the hour went soft around the edges. The lights buzzed. My palms were wet. My chest felt like it was caving in. I passed out cold on the floor outside the conference room where I was supposed to be moderating a panel. Melanie found me. I came to with her hand on my face and her voice cutting through the fog. She didn't panic, didn't flinch. She called the ambulance and stayed beside me until the doors shut behind us. In the hospital, she brought soup in a paper bag, a phone charger, chapstick. She sat at the edge of the bed and asked, "Do you want to live?" I didn't have an answer, not one I believed. I said, "I don't know." She nodded once. "Okay." I went home 3 days later. The apartment looked exactly the same. Color-coordinated furniture, the orchid on the counter, everything in its place. But a printed note waited on the dining table. Plain white paper, clean font. It said, "I've tried. You're not the only one hurting. No perfume, no lipstick, just space between us laid out in ink." There was a folder beside the modem. I opened it. Clinic paperwork. The same place where I'd recovered after the wreck. But this time, my name had family liaison authorizations attached. Mom's name signed next to mine. Attached were emails between her assistant and the clinic, marked priority. Updates, approvals, schedule control. The subject line on one, med dose revisions for stability. My hands were ice. I scanned everything before my brain could start justifying it. Audrey's name never appeared once. 2 weeks passed. I didn't leave the couch. I slept there, ate there, answered nothing. I watched Melanie from across the room as she packed her side of the closet. No tears, no drama. The last note she left was short. "I won't let you ruin my life. I'm filing for divorce." She signed her name like it was a contract. And honestly, maybe it was. The divorce finalized that winter. By spring, I was legally on my own. HR called the next Monday, asked me to resign, said they needed the seat for a donor's nephew, said my personal concerns had made people nervous. All it took was 3 calls. I never got to become unreliable. I called my dad. "You created this mess," he said. "Don't you dare drag my name into it. Be a man. Fix it." "What did you do to her?" I asked. He hung up. That was it. No lie, no cover, just silence. It rained for 2 straight days. I ran out of food and didn't notice until the cupboards were empty. The orchid on the counter turned brown at the edges. I didn't throw it out. When the landlord taped a notice to the door, I didn't rip it down. I didn't call anyone. I sold the last suit that fit me and used the cash to buy a cheap jacket and a pair of boots with torn insoles. Then I walked. Nowhere special. Just out. Until the city thinned and my feet bled through the socks. When you've got nowhere, you go where you saw the least judgment. Almost 2 years after that dinner, after the clinic, after the divorce, after the lights went out, I walked back to Harbor House with a backpack that smelled like mildew and a headache pounding like a bad drum line. The front door stuck, same as I remembered. Inside, the lobby still smelled like soup and bleach. A new couch had replaced the old one, but the bulletin board hadn't changed. Flyers for GED classes, food drives, free dental screenings. A guy at the desk, gray beard, soft sweatshirt, kind eyes, looked up and said, "Eat first, talk later," like it was advice and an order. I nodded, sat down with a bowl of something thick and hot, and ate like I hadn't had real food in days. Because I hadn't. Afterward, I was standing near the side hallway, not sure what came next, when a girl maybe 15 pointed at me and said, "You were the juggler." I blinked. "What?" "You juggled foam balls in the old playroom," she said. "I was 8. You dropped one and blamed the air conditioner." She grinned and pulled a card from her coat. "You look rough. Go see Miss Angela." The card had the Harbor House logo on it and a name written in pen, Angela Brown, office 202. I walked up the narrow staircase and found the office. Her name was on the door in faded vinyl lettering. Inside, A busted fern leaned sideways off a filing cabinet. Angela sat behind a desk that looked like it had been carried up in 3 pieces. She didn't stand. Just looked at me, then at the card. "You've had a few lives," she said, reading it. "I've lived all of them badly." She didn't smirk, didn't blink. Just picked up my resume, the old one, laminated and useless, and flipped through it like it still meant something. "Can you teach?" she asked. "I don't know. We need someone for English and basic financial literacy. Most of these parents never got a shot. Can you do that?" "I've never taught anyone anything," I said. Angela nodded. "Good. No bad habits to unlearn. You start on probation. 2 weeks. Room across the hall. Cash advance today." Before my pride could say anything stupid, I nodded. She pulled a drawer, counted out $180 in 20s, slid it over, and said, "Coffee's free. Keep the cups out of the sink." I took the key, the cash, and turned toward the door. She went back to typing like she hadn't just given a man with nothing a chance to matter again. "Our director, Hank, is getting married this weekend," she said offhand, like it was weather. "He grew up here. He's marrying Audrey Adams. They met through Harbor House years ago. She started volunteering when she was 16. I didn't answer. Couldn't. She looked up. "You okay?" My stomach just dropped. "Food'll do that if you've been empty." I nodded and left before I said something that made me crack in half. I walked the old route to the Brooklyn waterfront. Same busted sidewalk, same rusted hydrant, same uneven pier where I first heard her play. The street artist, Nate, still had his table out. Charcoal hands, baseball cap, tired eyes that had seen too much. He looked at me once and said, "You aged bad." I sat on the curb and said, "You still have it?" He didn't ask what I meant, just reached into a flat file under his folding table and pulled out a sketch. Audrey, cello in hand, hair pulled back, eyes fixed forward, not posing, just being. "I kept this one," he said. "Didn't want to sell it. I want it now." He didn't argue, just held it until I handed him most of the cash Angela had given me. I didn't count it. He didn't ask. Back in the room Angela assigned me, I sat on the bed with the sketch in my lap and tried to write something that made sense. The first note started with, "I'm sorry." I ripped it up. The second said, "You saved me once. I didn't deserve it." That went in the trash too. The third one stuck. It just said, "You were right to walk away. I hope this brings peace. I'm not asking for anything." I wrapped the sketch in plain brown paper, taped the note to the front, and stared at it like it might explode. Tomorrow was the wedding. And I was going. The community hall at Harbor House looked like someone had tried too hard, and not at all at the same time. Paper lanterns hung from the rafters, some crooked. The long folding tables were covered in thin plastic cloths, with glitter taped to the edges. The air smelled like empanadas, cheap white wine, and Costco sheet cake. I stood in the back near a column and told myself not to breathe too loud. Nobody noticed me. I was just another guy in a wrinkled button-down. I didn't belong, and that was the point. Hank walked out first. Navy suit, clean cut, same posture I remembered from that night near the alley. Broad shoulders, calm face. He looked nervous, sure, but it didn't rattle him. He walked like a man finally stepping into a room he'd already earned. Audrey followed 5 minutes later. The room hushed. She wore lace, not bright white, but something softer, like cream mixed with dust from a chalk mural. Her veil floated like a quiet wave, light as breath. She didn't look around the room, didn't search faces. She looked straight at Hank, steady. He lifted her veil, and she smiled. Not big, not staged, just the kind of smile that folds a moment in half and makes it clean again. It hit me in the throat harder than I expected. They said simple vows, nothing showy, nothing borrowed from movies, just a few lines about showing up and staying. Audrey's voice didn't shake once. When they kissed, the applause hit the room like a sudden wave along the wall. I waited until people stood for photos and phones were out before I moved. I slipped the wrapped sketch onto the gift table behind a pile of homemade cards and mismatched envelopes. On the top, I taped a small white card that said, "I'm sorry. Be happy." That was it. Angela spotted me before I could get to the door. "You clean up okay?" she said. "I'm not staying." She didn't argue. I figured. "I left the room key on your desk." She nodded once. "You get where you're going?" "I will. Send me a mailing address when you've got one." I didn't promise anything. Just walked out before the cake was cut. The streets were dark by the time I hit the subway. I rode silent and stiff, my fingers still carrying the heat from the sketch paper. At the station, I counted my cash, what was left after rent, food, and Nate's drawing. Not much, but enough. I bought a ticket north, one way. No questions. The train was quiet. Clean car, no kids, no chatter. Just strangers hiding from each other behind headphones and tired eyes. Something about the way the Hudson flickered by in the dark made the whole country feel too big and too small at once. Like you could vanish in it, but you'd still hear your name in the wind. I pulled out my phone. Not the old one. The cheap replacement with barely any memory and a prepaid plan. I opened an old file I never deleted. An audio note recorded by accident from the day in the clinic. It was my mother's voice. Calm, low, steady. "We couldn't do otherwise," she said. "He would have destroyed everything. He left us no room when he pushed." Soft words, sharp meaning. That was always her trick. I clipped the audio, just that sentence. Then I pulled up an email I'd never sent, addressed to a donor's chief of staff I knew from my foundation days, someone who always smiled like she hated my father's kind. I attached the audio file and 3 scanned emails. Subject line: irregular medical interventions, private clinic, Back Bay linked trust. No name, no signature, just evidence. I hit send and turned off the phone, left it on the seat beside me and got off 3 stops later without it. At a diner across the street from the station, I ordered black coffee and texted Angela from a borrowed phone. "I'll pay back the advance when I can. Thank you." She wrote back 1 minute later. A single thumbs up. No words. It was exactly the kind of answer I could handle. At the counter, I asked if there was a travel agent still open. The cashier told me about a kiosk 2 blocks down. I walked there and bought a red-eye to Anchorage. The woman asked if I had bags. I said no. The flight was half empty. A man next to me slept the entire way with his mouth open. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I just stared out the window at the dark. At the airport, I didn't wait for a shuttle. I took the local bus down the peninsula, sat next to a woman holding a baby wrapped in a blanket with cartoon lobsters on it. She offered me a cracker. I took it. 12 hours later, I stepped off in Homer. Sea air hit me in the face like a dare. The docks were quiet, the air heavy with salt and diesel. I sat on a bench made from driftwood and watched a boat crew offload crates of fish into a cart that looked older than the town. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a plan. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't pretending. By the time I hit the docks in Homer, the water didn't feel like escape. It felt like an answer. Cold, clear, not asking anything from me. A guy with a busted cap and a stitched-up vest needed someone who wasn't drunk at 6 in the morning. He pointed at a stack of crab pots and said, "Think you can lift?" I said I could. First week I hauled until my hands cracked open. Salt water made it worse, but I didn't care. The pain was real. Honest. No pills, no fake soft words, just weight and wet rope. Second month I started working in a cedar shed a mile inland, learning to shape hulls with a plane and a sharp eye. The place smelled like sap, smoke, and diesel. I got used to wiping my nose on my sleeve and tuning out the radio. The first night alone, I didn't dream. I lay flat, arms crossed, staring at the ceiling until morning. The second week, I did dream. Audrey stood by a tree stump, hair down, arms crossed. She didn't speak, just looked at me. I woke up dry. I took that as a win. The post office was small. One clerk. No one asked questions. That spring I mailed $200 to Harbor House. No name, no return address. Just an envelope with a scrap of paper that said, "For supplies." Next year I sent $400. The year after that, $850. Fourth year, $1,250. The note said, "For winter coats." That was it. I didn't know who opened them. I didn't care. The money wasn't guilt payment. It was the only thing I had left to offer that didn't need to come with an apology. One spring, a postcard showed up in my box. No stamp, no return label, just a charcoal sketch of dandelions. Same loose, careful style I remembered. No signature. I stared at it for 20 minutes before sliding it into the back of my tool drawer. I didn't frame it. That would have been pretending I deserved to. A kid named Caleb started hanging around the dock that summer. 15, built like he wanted to fight the wind. Angry in that way only boys get when no one's told them what to do with pain. He tried to steal my gloves once, didn't run fast enough. I sat him down on a log and asked, "You want a job, or do you want to be an idiot?" He shrugged. "Depends what pays better." We built a bench together. Driftwood, no plans. Just shape, sand, and fit. I paid him in pancakes and cash. He came back the next day. A voicemail came in one cold afternoon while I was planing down the bow of a skiff. Number I didn't know. Voice I didn't expect. It was the driver. Older now. Scratchy voice like rust under gravel. "I got a grandson in the hospital. Don't got work. Don't got a clean name to put on forms." There was a pause. Then, "I never touched a syringe. The clinic did the meds. I drove. That's all I did." Another pause. "I owed your father from embassy days. I was told to follow the orders. I did. Doesn't make it right." A longer pause. "Your mother loves you," he said, voice cracked. "She thought it was for your good. Doesn't mean I agree." He hung up. I didn't call him back. I asked a cousin who still lived near D.C. to pass along $300 in cash to a man who used to drive black sedans and knew how to disappear. The cousin asked, "What's this about?" "Debt," I said. "Mine, not yours." A year later, a friend from D.C. sent me a text. No greeting. Just a screenshot of a local headline, "Senior Diplomat Resigns Amid Donor Audit." The subhead read, "Questions emerge around private medical arrangements and family access misuse." The article didn't say much, just that my father had stepped down for health reasons. I didn't feel joy, not revenge either, just balance. Out here, you learn that the tide brings what it wants. Some days it gives, most days it doesn't. Either way, you don't pretend it's personal. You take it. You do the work. You stay out of the way when the water's high. Over 3 years in Homer, I wrote to Angela maybe 5 times. Never long letters, just a quick update, a photo of the shop in the snow, a joke about the dock dog stealing gloves again. Once I sent a picture of a skiff we built from salvaged cedar and signed it, still upright so far. She wrote back twice. Neat handwriting, no fluff. Each note had just one question, always practical. One said, "Are you eating?" The next, "Do you have heat?" Not a single word of pity. That's how I knew she meant it. 4th winter she showed up. No warning. Just a knock at the shed, and there she was, wearing a parka 2 sizes too big, and boots that looked like she'd gone to the store and asked, "Which ones won't make me fall on my face?" She looked colder than she let on, but she smiled and said, "You got any halibut that isn't frozen solid?" We ate at the counter downtown. She ordered coffee and didn't add anything. I watched her pull off her gloves like she belonged there already. That afternoon we walked the spit while the wind pushed sideways. We didn't talk much. You had to lean in to hear anything anyway. By the time we hit the last bench before the rocks, I asked, "You staying for a few days?" She looked out at the gray water and said, "Give me a month." At the cannery office, they let her answer phones. At the shop, she handled inventory and kept a ledger I could finally read without squinting. Customers liked her voice. No one asked if she was my girlfriend. She didn't act like one. One night she stood by the stove while I peeled potatoes and said, "You don't need someone to rescue you, Matt. You need a partner." I wiped my hands on a towel, looked at her and said, "Would you be mine?" No ring. No promise I can't keep yet. Just now. She didn't smile. She nodded. That was enough. We got married low-key on a Tuesday. No suit. No white dress. 3 witnesses, Caleb, a shop owner, and the clerk. Grocery store brownies and a handwritten receipt as a keepsake. I wore a clean flannel. She wore a knitted hat that kept slipping sideways. 2 summers later, Owen was born. Broad shoulders, tiny fists, dark eyes that squinted like he already didn't trust the world. I held him and felt fear crawl up my back and awe land right behind it. I whispered, "You can be anything but numb, kid. Anything but that." He cried like he'd heard me. One afternoon, a tourist at the dock stared at me too long and finally said, "You're Rogers, right? I knew your father. U.S. Embassy, Prague. Quite a man." I nodded. Sanded the edge of the transom like I hadn't heard him. He waited for me to say something else. "Enjoy your trip," I said, and kept working. That night, Angela sat in the old chair with a paperback and a headlamp. I carved near the window, shaping a dowel for the shelf she wanted by the bed. Somewhere between sanding and smoothing, a postcard slipped out of one of her books and landed near my foot. Charcoal dandelions. No signature. Same strokes. Same shape. I picked it up, slid it back between the pages, and didn't ask. Some things don't need retelling. Once a year I mailed Harbor House another envelope. Always unsigned, always untraceable. The note inside never changed. For winter gear. I was 37, and the boy who used to sit quiet in silk shirts and say the right things still lived inside me, but I didn't let him steer anymore. I knew where he was. I just didn't visit too often. Owen and I fished a rocky outcrop near the point where the sea carved into the cliffs like it meant it. He talked more than he listened, about crab traps and spaceships and why ketchup was better than mustard, and I let him. For his age, that felt like a win. On the walk back, we passed the skiff I'd built the fall before. The cedar had gone soft gray, the knots right where I'd left them. I didn't try to hide seams in my work anymore. Honest labor doesn't need polish. Just wait. Angela packed too many sandwiches as usual. Tuna on rye, a peanut butter backup, and a single red apple that always came home uneaten. She still asked if I was warm enough and always carried a spare knit hat. Not for me, for someone. Just in case. That's how she moved through the world. Once every winter I sat in the post office lobby and slid an unmarked envelope into the Harbor House slot. The clerk never asked. She glanced once, nodded once, and kept it moving. A few years back I got another card. Same dandelions, different hand, a little tighter, a little more careful. Still charcoal, still unsigned. I didn't frame that one either. I kept it in the bottom drawer of the toolbox under a strip of duct tape that said, "Do not touch." 3 years ago, my mother sent me an email on my birthday. Just a subject line, "Still thinking of you," and 2 paragraphs dressed like closure. "We made the only responsible choice," she wrote. "You left us no room when you pushed." I didn't respond. Just closed the screen, grabbed the oil can, and fixed the hinge on the shed door that had been screaming for months. Thing about a door that squeaks long enough, if you don't fix it, you start to think the sound belongs there. Like it's part of the house. But it's not. It's just a thing no one bothered to fix. Sometimes people in town asked if I ever saw Audrey again. Not curious, just gentle. I always said no. And I meant it. Some stories don't need a reunion. Some lives are better honored from a distance, especially when you were the one who let them drown and then told yourself it was someone else's tide. If there was revenge in this whole mess, it didn't look like a front-page headline. My father's circle tightened and then folded, one seat at a time, until no one said the name Rogers without whispering. My money went places he'd never approve of. My kid would never learn that love is a deal, a dinner, or a down payment. I was raised to inherit, to avoid, to execute a plan I didn't write. Now I chop wood, fix boats, teach my son how to tie knots and split kindling and speak the truth without shaking. It won't make headlines. It won't impress a room. It's mine. Before you head out, let me throw something at you straight. If you were in Matthew's boots, would you have walked away from your old life or tried to fight for a different ending? And if you've got hype, tap it now to push this story further. Make sure to subscribe and hit like, it helps more than you think, and drop a comment, even a simple good story, so I know you're here. Love you guys.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.